So Michael tells us that California stood alone as a state with a major case challenging the exclusion of same-sex couples from marriage. But where were the historians? Why no brief among the more than 75 briefs submitted on both sides of this historic case from Michael and Nancy and other colleagues? I think it's because the argument had won. It had won in California before this litigation came about. No one in the case took it, challenged the claim that marriage was changing, marriage had always been fluid, that the California Family Code had shifted over time as a result of both litigation, court decisions, and statutory changes. No one took seriously the possibility that there was a single static meaning to the marital relationship and to the obligations of husbands and wives under California family law. Indeed, in California, the defendants of the exclusion of same-sex couples from marriage, that is the governor and the state attorney general, essentially conceded almost all of the arguments brought on behalf of the same-sex couples by, who were represented by a number of the sort of standard advocacy groups within the state and within the nation, as well as being represented by the city and county of San Francisco. I'm going to return to the significance of that in a few minutes. But the state attorney general and the governor did not dispute that marriage law had been capacious and open-ended, and indeed expressed pride in the fact that California, almost 20 years before the federal courts got around to this, had in the Perez case of 1948 stricken our anti-miscegenation law. The state came to this case with a defense that was limited to a claim about the importance of maintaining tradition. And what was the tradition that they said was so important? The tradition of one man, one woman, engaged in at least the potential procreative act that would produce offspring and be produced in a relationship that would encourage stability and would be beneficial to these children. The state further claimed and further defended its action in trying to continue this restriction against same-sex couples by pointing to the creation, and indeed they argued to the flourishing, of this alternative institution of domestic partnership here within the state of California. Basically saying to the court, we love our gays. Look what we have done for our gays. We have given them, we have allowed them to adopt children, to adopt each other's children, to jointly adopt children from the public welfare system. We have recognized parentage as a result of reproductive technologies based on a presumption that if you intend to be a parent, you are a parent regardless of your sexual orientation. We have said to gays, you are welcome in our polity, you are welcome everywhere. We give to gays domestic partnership, and we give domestic partnership with a prefatory paragraph stating the policy and the findings of the California legislature. And that statement of policy and findings is basically that same-sex couples who make a commitment to each other of love and desire to spend their lives together are functionally equivalent in all respects to opposite sex or to traditional man-woman married couples. And because they are functionally equivalent, we are giving them an equivalent institution to enjoy. So in California, the argument in the constitutional framing of the questions before the California Supreme Court was not about this march to freedom. It was, freedom has come, and we have granted it and recognized it. But surely these arguments about the evolution of marriage over time could not possibly contemplate that marriage would be consisting of two individuals other than one of each kind, one man and one woman. The oral argument before the California Supreme Court in early 2008 in this challenge was particularly fascinating because the members of the court walked in and almost immediately began to talk about the M word and whether marriage, the word itself, had some kind of independent constitutional significance that could be separated from the bundles of benefits and rights and obligations that went along with the marital relationship. And whether what was at stake in the California case was not at all about children, not at all about the quality of parent-child relationships, was not at all about procreation, much less about so-called responsible procreation, but was about ownership of the symbolic pluses that went along with the M word. And much of the discussion in the court was about the ownership of that word, and indeed an aspect of the court's ultimate opinion, which did strike down the restriction in California as unconstitutional, at least under the California Constitution,